on it, so you kind of find the best support.
You really willing your hand to defend it.
Maybe you'll fall asleep. Yeah, marker at 10, well, you read down there for a reason.
I hope.
You really think-
Rod won't be here.
What's that?
He's got to work.
He does?
Okay. Tonight, yesterday, he didn't get back from the afternoon on time, but. So. And Darcy had a migraine. He texted me, I think she had a migraine, but
Right.
I haven't heard from her today. I asked her.
For my-
Oh,
For my audit,
It's on my dentist desk.
you haven't seen it.
no, he hasn't seen it. So I've been doing 500 things. Well, you were Josh.
I just want to get it to them and signed, so it's delivered.
So they don't change their mind.
Yeah.
Effective dates.
I emailed Jonathan earlier, I'm like, can you please call them and check in? I'm getting very nervous.
Very nice. They're very nice.
Yeah, she sent a very nice email back.
Be our project. That should be.
Yeah.
I think there's some continued tweaking we need to do.
Okay, well, you said something last night about some
They
kind
have
of a
money for
process for
me.
whatever, and I thought, well, be a process. Leaving it in your hands.
Not this year. A little late now, but yes.
Yeah, for this year, yeah.
Usually. Today. Setting up like a work session for the council.
Right.
How are we gonna handle this?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So yes, don't have the answer, but I think that.
I'll wait for you to get seated.
Needs to change. What? Change?
No problem.
Where's Serena?
All righty. Thank you. Great comments on that.
Anytime.
How's Rich?
Debbie?
What's up with Councilor Rod?
I did, okay. Oh, turn on your mic.
Away? Gone?
He's away tonight again, and he was away last night doing driving. So like to call the meeting to order for the second continuation of the budget committee meeting of the city of the Dalles. This is, we're starting at 5:30 in the council hall chambers. And do I need to read the agenda at the top again or just continue on?
Continue on.
Thank you for clarification. So last night we ended up with police.
We'll start with roll call on the agenda.
Okay, roll call.
Sorry.
Roll call,
20 minutes.
please. City clerk.
Ben Ring,
Present.
Scott Randall,
Present.
Debbie Ferrer,
Present.
Tim McLaughlin,
Present.
Sandy Hakerl, Serena Smith, and
Present.
Dan Richardson, Rod
Present.
Runyon, and Darcy Long are absent.
Dan Richardson, right here.
Rod Runyon.
Oh, sorry. I'm here and ready to go.
All right, moving on to number 3. Do we need to do an approval of the minutes? Okay, we need to take a motion for that, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last night.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, we have a second. Serena Sharp was second.
Smith.
Smith, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sharp though.
Okay. All right, now we have a motion and we have a second on the floor. Any discussions? None. All right, we go, yes.
One just small thing. Sorry about that. As I read through the minutes at home that Isaiah sent, I missed actually the airport because it was so brief. There was a lot of information about the others. I'm just curious why the airport fund presentation was just no detail there. Does there need to be? Apparently not.
No, he just reviewed his items.
So any other points, any other questions, any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All, anyone, no? None, so that carries. We move on to number 4, continuation of the budget presentation by fund. And I'll turn that over to Director Cleaves.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief comment at the opening here. I wanted to note that we have brought up a handy dandy whiteboard as city staff have quickly been used to. I use whiteboards a fair amount in various meetings I have. This is a concept we've used before, where it's essentially a parking lot. We used it last year in another project committee efforts. And so as we go through these presentations through each of the departments, we have items that we want to flag for further consideration and conversation later. You'll mark that up on the whiteboard. And so you'll see that we have the youth empowerment shelter listed there to date under the specific fund that item budgeted in to help guide some of that conversation.
I'd like to pause for a second. The participation from home on Zoom, are you able to hear clearly? Someone?
Yes.
All right, so I'll just check every once in a while to ensure that you're able to hear. All right, Matthew, it's back to you.
Thank you. And so with that comment, if there aren't any other questions, we can, I believe, begin where we left off last night with the city clerk's budget.
Thank you. There are only a couple changes to the city clerk budget. It stays pretty consistent. Oh, sorry, page 78.
78.
I tabbed mine. The biggest change, well, there was two. I have budgeted for professional development as I'm retiring this year, and the new city clerk may need to go to those. If they haven't before, it's super important to have that training. And there's a line item that's kind of increased because of paying out my sick time when I retire. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same.
Anyone have any questions or comments on the city clerk's proposed budget worksheet? Hearing none, then we'll move on. City manager? City manager is next.
Yes, sir. If you turn to page 82, you'll see Manager's Department worksheet. I'm highlighting some changes here. We have the executive assistant position. We are hoping to have interviews for that candidate very soon, coming up in the next few weeks. And some of the highlights in this section of the budget, wanted to note some additional memberships and dues, 3/4 of the way down the page, specifically Oregon Latinos and Local Government Hispanic Network. These were memberships that some other cities participate in that I learned about at the OCCMA conference. And something I wanted to allocate resources for consideration. I want to make sure that we don't simply become a member and place a check mark next to this, have nothing more substance or meaning behind it. So as we go through the course of the year, we'll fully vet those and explore how we may benefit and bring best practices or lessons learned from that network, all in the effort of having a transparent and welcoming local government for our diverse population here. Other than that, we have League of Oregon Cities, OCCMA conference, and some tuition reimbursement, essentially for continuing education.
That it? Oh, yeah, great. All right. Any questions of Director Klebs? Hearing none, we will move on to legal.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes.
This was an exciting year for the legal department. It was our first full fiscal year since the position was brought back to being an in-house city attorney here in this city. Last year, we sort of ventured off into some unknown waters and trying to figure out what made the most sense when it came to a budget in preparation for reopening the legal department here. I'd like to think that we did a great job. And by we, I primarily mean the finance director for all of her help. In preparing for this year's budget, similarly like to thank the finance director for her help. There isn't tremendous amount of change. If you take a look at page 86 for the budget worksheet, you'll see some of the differences. They're very top under personnel. We parsed out salaries for the city attorney and for the part-time paralegal from the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget to the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. There was an inclusion, and really the only difference in the personnel services for this fiscal year is the inclusion of retirement fund, which was absent from the first go around. And by far the largest increase from last year's legal department budget is listed under materials and services for contractual services. I wanted to do a slightly different approach to how I listed the contractual services for the legal department this year. And I wanted to sort of indicate specifically where these numbers are coming from. The first one, and I'll just go over them very briefly. The first one is connected with public records litigation involving the city. This is a completely reimbursable expense. And so as part of the budget law process, part of the budget process, we have to follow local budget law, and part of that even means including things on here that's completely reimbursable. Same goes for, to a smaller degree, same goes for the special counsel for the airport. There's an 100,000 proposed for this year's fiscal year budget, but 50% of that will be reimbursed by Klickitat County, 50% of every dollar spent. And we wanted to include a contingency. And so some members of council might know that, throughout the fiscal year, from time to time, there might be a budget resolution or a budget amendment gets passed through or presented for the council to pass, which would, typically involve addition of some funds to the legal department. And so in an effort to try to mitigate against having that occur as much as we can, we figured we might want to front load on the budget this year to avoid these unexpected legal expenses that might arise, which are often very difficult to foresee. And so aside from those two changes under personnel for the inclusion of the retirement contributions and for expanding the contractual services, those are effectively the only changes.
All right.
Jonathan, if I may.
Yes, please.
So Jonathan just mentioned that the contractual services were a reimbursable cost. If you look on your page 69 of the general fund revenues, that's where you will see that revenue coming in at the bottom of the page under other miscellaneous revenues. We've budgeted for those reimbursement costs there.
Thank you. Any concerns, comments, questions? Panel? I hear or see none. Therefore, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on. We're going to do finance, utility billing, and judicial now.
Good evening. So I'm going over the finance, the utility billing, and the judicial department. Within the finance, utility, and judicial, we have 6 full-time FTEs, full-time employees. We have two in finance, 2 in utility, and then the judicial and part of the judge. So the finance and the utility department, we do a lot of payroll, receipts, accounts payable, accounts receivable. We do the fixed assets, all the general ledger. We do the transient room taxes, and we do the gas taxes. And we also do the finance utility court computer system software program. Within our budget on page 90, starting out with the finance department. One of the things that I'd like to point out this evening is on the contractual services. At the bottom on the blue, we have budgeted $35,000 for the budget book. At the time, this is we were going to look at doing a process of getting a budget book to help us, implement our budget book a little bit better. And I think that we're kind of looking at going in a little bit different direction and doing more forecasting. We put the forecasting in our budget for this current year, but it was just, we were really having a hard time trying to find somebody that would do that forecasting within the amount that we budgeted. So we're going to try to go back to getting the forecasting budget, and we've found that we could possibly be working with Marina and Company, and they could help us do some of that forecasting. So we're going to go away from the budget book and go back to our forecasting, so that changes. The amount doesn't change, but just what we're going to use that money for is going to. Also, our accounting and advisory services are pretty much staying the same. We always budget for our OPEB analysis report. We never really know exactly how much that's going to cost from year to year. So we budget that the 15,000, and fortunately in the past, it's always come down less than that, but we do keep that amount in there just for the unforeseen. And we've increased our travel, food and lodging, and our training. There was several years there that we did not do any travel due to COVID. And so I'm trying to get staff back up to date, get them some more experience in some other areas, kind of get them up to date with all of our new GASB rules and all of our accounting rules that are changing on a constant basis. Is there any questions on any other items on the finance department? If not, I can move to the utility. So on the utility proposed budget worksheet, that's on page 93. Again, I have budgeted to have some travel, food and lodging, and some training and conferences again for the utility department, just to get them more up to date and to stay within the new rules of the laws for sending people to collections and other things like that, and how to deal with public and other items like that. On the contractual services, we have the bend mailing outsource utility billing. This is something that we've done annually for probably about the last 10 years. This really helps provide, it saves on paper, it saves on stamps. The bend mailing, we send an Excel sheet to them and they do all of our billing out for us. And that does save on a lot of supplies and other things. So that's how our process of our bills go out. Does anybody have any questions on the utility billing? Page 95 is the judicial department. The judicial department, we are again budgeting to do contractual services to give money to Wasco County to do our legal services for more than just traffic tickets. So misdemeanors, I'll go over to Wasco County now. It is, we have a contract with them that renews annually. And annually, that contract goes up 3%. So this year it will go back up to $90,042. We also, this is about the 5th year in a row that we use Western Collections for our delinquent account services. Used Western Collections, and then at the end of the year, we also submit to Oregon Department of Revenue, be able to get into a queue. To be able to try to get some of the money back on payments that do not get paid. Still budget for our court-appointed attorney fees, although that we're only doing traffic court, we do still have some outstanding warrants through our judicial system. So if anyone gets picked up on those warrants, we have to be able to offer them a court-appointed attorney fee. Court-appointed attorneys. And our judge and our judicial secretary, they do have a little bit of travel, food and lodging budgeted again. Our person that does our judicial for us, she just went to the OACA conference. The laws are changing all the time, so it's important that they keep up to date on those. Anyone have any questions on the judicial?
Chair recognizes Mayor Mays.
How long have we been contracting out with the county for that stuff?
I believe that this is the 5th year.
Sounds about right.
Mhm.
It was 2019. Or
This will be our 5th year.
Are we looking at possibility of taking that back, or is that something we will want to discuss publicly?
That is an item that we haven't dived too deeply in, but it's something that has been under consideration as one of those options to explore as we take a number of different efforts to look at the ordinances that the city has in the books, what's working, what could be more effective, what are we missing, and what other tools might we be able to employ. Historically, the city has had court services here. It would be tremendous shift to move that back. Certainly something to consider.
right. Other questions, other concerns, other? All right. Thank you. Does that conclude finance, utility, judicial?
Yes, thank
Let's
you.
move into human resources then.
All right, thank you, Chair and Budget Committee. We are on page 99 for the detailed spreadsheet. I'll just cover some highlights, and then if anyone has any questions, I will address those questions. As the chair mentioned earlier, when we were discussing revenues, there's $10,000 in revenue, and that comes from our benefit provider, healthcare benefit provider, and that is for employee wellness, to incentivize employees to get preventative care checkups over the year. Program basically is they provide us money to offset the cost of premiums to the employee as an incentive for the employee to get preventative care. And largely that program, from our perspective, is to help keep healthcare premiums low. One of the main drivers of increasing premiums is employees waiting until, or benefit receivers waiting until there's an emergency where they need to go to ER in order to address a health issue that may have been affecting them for some time. And they just finally reached a point where the ER was their best option. The incentive is just to incentivize them to get that care ahead of time, prevent that ER visit from ever taking place. So you'll see in my budget, there's $10,000 in employee wellness incentive under employee relations. That was there last year. And then through the budget process, we took that and the revenues out back in this year. The other larger ticket item is one that there is a budget information paper on, and that is for leadership training. And that was another item that was in the budget last year and was removed last year. I believe it was just over 27,000 for 8 personnel to go to the training, and it is through Executive Forum out of Portland. We've done some training with them through other programs they have for, called it Step Up, which is entry-level supervisors just coming out of workforce and getting into supervisory positions, helping them understand what this new role is. And all the feedback we've got from employees and their subordinates on that was very positive. So we're looking at broadening our approach with department heads and deputies, city manager, city attorney going to this training. It's very extensive training. It's over 90 days long, and it's through cohorts with private sector businesses and other local governments. I know in the coming year, it should be late summer, early fall. The city of Beaverton is also participating in the program, as well as some corporate partners in the Portland area, sending staff through that. And really the focus is to increase collaboration, coordination between various departments, and through that cohort process, increase the communication across functional areas. And really, from my perspective here at the City of the Dalles, we have various departments that work really well together because they're working together all the time. And in order to have a more cohesive organization, broadening that to the entire organization would be really beneficial, I think, to the entire organization. And so that's the impetus for training. Besides having a new city manager and a new city attorney, having that training would be beneficial to them and outcomes that they deliver to the community. The other big items are going to be in training budget and then in the safety budget. And you'll see some realize just by looking at the detail, it might get a little confusing as to CPR first aid training, because there's that's similar language for the training as well as in the safety line. Reason for that is under the training, there's two things happening there. We've got 70 personnel, about 70 personnel that we like to have CPR first aid training on, and that's going to be majority of operational employees at Public Works, police officers, then at least 2 personnel in each administrative office. In the event something happens, that way somebody's there that's trained how to perform life-saving measures. Due to the pandemic, no one's been trained in the last 2.5 years. So certifications are good for 2 years. Everybody's due. The other part of that training is to have our safety officer go through training to become a proctor for CPR first aid training, so that in the future we don't have to expend the funds to get employees certified. The thing we have to pay for is the card from either Red Cross or American Heart Association to get them trained. And that's where it comes in the safety line item for that similarly titled expenditure, and that is for the equipment necessary for the safety officer to perform that training. We're talking of the dummy that you lay on the floor, safety equipment that you put on so you're not cross-contaminating when one person to another, all that sort of stuff. With that, I'll take any questions.
Hood River, or excuse me, HR director access to Hood River Law Firm. Why do we need access to a Hood River law firm?
HR, human resources law firm.
Yes.
And so that is same labor attorney that council pays for out of their budget, but the council funds or council budgeted funds are only for labor negotiations. So if something comes up during the year where I have a legal question about a labor situation, I contact that labor attorney, pass it by them. We do it periodically. It doesn't amount to a lot of money over the year, but having the funds there allows me to contact that attorney to get questions out.
Yak tracks, do they last from year to year? Has that been on the budget before? Do we have
It
that
has
much
been.
ice?
It has been on the budget before, and I think it's typically maybe not identified specifically in the budget in previous years, but it's a safety item for anyone who's working outside. Basically, they're just rubber embossed chains that they strap over their shoes, and they work very well. And so anyone who's working outside or has to travel outside on icy pavement for their work.
Do you have to buy those every year? I mean,
So it depends.
they wear out?
So like police officers, if they're using them regularly, they're going to end up breaking them because they're going to be running after people. The other thing is new employees, unfortunately, sometimes don't have the same shoe size. So we'll have to buy new ones. So year to year, we don't typically buy a lot. But having the money there, purchase them.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. We're moving on to community development.
Good evening. The Community Development Department consists of 3 divisions: planning, historic preservation, economic development, as well as the recent addition of facilities maintenance. Department staff supports the work of City Council, Planning Commission, Historic Landmarks Commission, and the Urban Renewal Agency. The Community Development Director, myself, is the manager of the Urban Renewal Agency and contracts with the Department for Services. The agency approved their 23-24 fiscal year budget at the April 11th meeting, and we'll be adopting that at the May 16th meeting. We'll be discussing both the planning historic preservation side as well as the economic development budgets, while budgeting of facilities maintenance is included throughout the general fund. As we expand on the facilities division within the department over the next year with the help of a new facilities supervisor, anticipate some modifications as mentioned, modifications to the budget in the future as mentioned by the city manager. Briefly touched on this yesterday, for instance, capital improvement plans for city-owned properties. The first budget I'll be discussing is on for community development, the planning side of things on page 105, 106. That's our proposed budget worksheets. The planning historic preservation division deals with long-range planning, current planning, and historic long-range planning. Those are code amendments to the municipal code, the comprehensive plan. Current planning is your typical day-to-day permit review of development proposals. If you're looking, generally speaking, long-range and current planning has a timeline, long-range planning typically doesn't. That's a big difference in the two. This year's budget is rather status quo from years past. However, I did want to highlight some major line items. Some of the major line items you'll see are personnel services for salaries. Large discrepancy from this year and last year is that last year there was an amendment, I think it was last summer, to add both facilities maintenance supervisor and economic development officer to this budget. And this year, economic development officer will be in the economic development budget and the facilities will be in the general fund budget. So therefore you're seeing that big discrepancy from last year to this year. But relatively speaking, what was adopted from the previous year to now, I think I was looking at it's only about $9,000 difference. The other change is a decrease in contractual services. We will be finalizing our housing needs analysis. We are starting it currently in a couple months. Actually, this month we'll be starting it and we'll be finishing it in the next fiscal year. So there's some money budgeted for that. Otherwise, there was a reduction overall. The only thing to add to that is a new $20,000 budgeted for a new GIS aerial image, which is basically we pay for a plane to fly over the city and give us very precise pictures of the city, similar to Google Maps. But what you get here is you can zoom in much closer, and it's just, it's a lot more crisp, and we're able to incorporate it into all of our other GIS database and system and files. So it's a tool that is replacing our current, which is 2012. So as you can imagine, from 2012, we're not seeing near the development on those maps that we've seen. For instance, the Lone Pine development wasn't existing in 2012. So it's a very powerful tool that everybody in the city will have the opportunity to use, and it will actually expand out to include the airport as well. So this is a budget to include a flyover of the airport as well in the entire city. And then some slight increases you'll notice, and really those increases are due to technology. Costs of computers have gone up. The addition of host compliance software, which is a software that we use to monitor illegal short-term rentals in the city. So it's a very beneficial tool for us. And yeah, just some software, and that's about it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
What is it? You just said it was an illegal short-term rental. What's that?
Oh, so basically it's illegal, sorry, that's maybe extreme, a non-permitted short-term rental that's operating in the city.
Oh.
So, you know, when you're operating, when you have a short-term rental in the city, you need to have a short-term rental license.
Oh, I
So
didn't
we
know
have a
that.
program that effectively has algorithms that digs through all the websites that you can post online, and it sends an automated letter to the property owner. That property owner then reaches out to the planning department. So it's in cooperation between our department as well as the finance department. And we found out, I think it's a pretty efficient system. So I think it's worth.
Excellent. Any other questions? Any other things you noticed?
I have one.
Yes,
Briefly. Josh,
Councilman.
Thank you. You mentioned, Josh, the facilities managers under a different budget. Which is that?
I can't speak to it. I would need some help from the finance.
Saying for the
director on where
facilities
it's at.
manager.
Yeah.
The facility manager, along with the facility department technicians that are currently working for us, they're split up between the general services. Some of them are put in a library, in the police department, and the state office building.
Thank you.
How do you split that up by number of hours they spend?
It's an average of so many hours. That's from historically what they've spent over there.
Yes, Mayor Mays.
Um,
Would you pull the microphone closer, please?
Let me give it right back. Could you explain when we last had a housing needs analysis and why we need a new one?
Yeah, last time was 2017, and it is required of all cities to update their housing needs analysis every so many years. Ours happens to be in 2025 is when it's required. So we are getting a jump start on it. However, it is something that was budgeted in the previous budget, and we didn't start the work on it. We kind of drug our feet a little bit, getting the work done on it. So now we are starting it towards the end of this budget, and we will be finishing it up in the next budget. That's why you see there's a budget for $15,000 to basically finish everything up. I think most of the work will already be done. I had some drafts sent over to me actually right before this meeting. So most of the work is done, but there will be some additional contracting time for the multiple public hearings take place in this budget year.
There's other reasons why we need this besides the fact that it's required. I mean, this is going to help us do certain things in the future.
Yeah. It's a breakdown of letting us, so there's a housing needs analysis as well as a buildable lands inventory. And it gives us an opportunity to take a look at the land that we have, land that is constrained, what's available, how much land we have to build. The ability to take a look at the numbers of, projected forecasts in population, and having the opportunity to plan for it pinpoints the number of units that we need to build every year to stay up to speed, up to pace on things. And then it also will result in some recommendations and changes to the municipal code and possibly the comprehensive plan that could, ultimately generate some ability to produce more housing. So changes in the code, for instance, the last time around, some of these things that were notified, not only was it a state requirement, but pinpointing, making it easier to develop ADUs and duplexes in the city, just adding, making it that much easier adds to our housing supply. Just kind of, that answers your question for you.
Important deal, and it's, remember the building lands inventory was somewhat controversial.
It was and is.
Yeah, and there is two. So there is the residential housing needs analysis, which has a buildable lands inventory, and then there's the economic buildable lands inventory. That's the one that's been a little contentious. My goal in this next year is that both of them will be adopted. So I'm working, the consultant we're working with on the housing needs analysis, he was also our consultant with the economic BLI. So he will said there's still some money in his budget and his scope of work that he's going to try to get us across the finish line with that other one. So hopefully by the end of the year, it'll be in front of city council.
Other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. We're going on. It looks like we've done human resources, community development, economic, IT is next.
I think we have some additional detail for economic.
All right. And please continue.
Yeah. So on page 110, this is the budget worksheet. So economic development is one of the divisions within the community development department. The division, oversees, really works with the Urban Renewal Agency, as well as Wasco County Economic Development Commission, City Manager's Office, their planning department. And here you'll see the major line item, unlike the planning department, which was pretty, I think there was a decrease overall. You'll see a major increase in the economic development because the addition of a new economic development officer into that. So there was never a position in that budget before. So that's why there's a large increase there, as well as everything that goes with a new position, making sure there's, budgeted for trainings, conferences, travel, membership, equipment. We had kind of an unsuccessful recruitment process over this winter, but the position is currently posted and hopefully we will having some interviews in the next week or so to try to fill that position. We're excited about it. They will be a direct support to the Urban Renewal Agency. Will help usher in our newly adopted incentive program, as well as some other exciting projects that are being proposed and discussed in the area. So really excited to have that person on board. The other increases you'll see is in contractual services. One of them being a rare planner. The city recently applied for a rare planner who will assist the EDO, facilities supervisor, as well as myself and the Chamber of Commerce for a variety of projects that we have laid out for them. There is some money added in for grant writing and support services. This will assist with citywide grant services. The continued $25,000, which is this continued support to the Main Street program. And then the other line item there is the downtown parking study. As we continue to encourage and promote development downtown, we need a comprehensive parking study to outline the requirements of this new development. A lot of times with development, we run up against parking requirements. Parking can be detrimental to certain types of development. So we need to take a look at, really a comprehensive plan of the downtown. The last time we had, I think there was a parking task force that I think that was in 2016, 2017. And then there was a preferred parking plan, which I believe may have been the last time that we had an overall study of the downtown area. That was in 2004. So this will give us an opportunity to take a look. And we do know that there is in the urban renewal area, there is some exciting developments coming downtown that will require parking. So it'd be good for the city moving forward to continue to promote development downtown for us to take a real hard look at parking. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Please.
What's the ETA for like the parking study and whatnot?
I told him as soon as you guys approve it, I was going to reach out. I have them tentatively scheduled for July and August, but we need to ensure, that the money is budgeted before we can commit. But yeah, I just spoke with them just last week.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Other questions?
Just a comment that I welcome the parking study because that's probably about the single most common remark I've gotten just in my involvement in the last couple of years with city issues. Besides maybe the homeless concerns, is this sort of mass delusion that we are under a shortage of parking. And I would like to have some real thoughts and data about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the quote we received is from a firm that had they've done parking management plans all over the state and talked to 3 different people on separate occasions. They recommended this outfit. They are kind of the go-to. So really exciting to work with them. We've already done a little bit of work with them. They've done some consulting work with us already, and just having that little opportunity to work with them, it's going to be a really exciting project.
And what are the exciting developments that are coming downtown that we need more parking for?
Well, I don't always like to share rumors, because development is one thing that, there's a lot of obstacles to development, and sometimes something, may be proposed that just never comes to fruition. But there is, possibly a multi-story apartment complex. We are tearing down the Tony's building very soon. That could easily turn into a 3 or 4 story mixed use building. We have 9 units just added in one building downtown in the Pioneer building. It used to be office spaces up above. 9 units were added there. So we're consistently seeing this growth of the number of dwelling units. So yeah, it's exciting.
But then we need a grocery store.
Yeah, and
Downtown.
I hear that's coming as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Maybe sooner than you may think.
Thanks.
I saw some painting going on
Oh,
the outside of one of those, that corner.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, something happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it is that if we actually approved the site plan review for the grocery store just on Monday. So
Excellent. Anything else? All right, thank you very much, Josh.
you.
Yep. All right, we completed economic development. Now we're on to IT. Who will be giving this?
I would like to introduce our new IT manager, David Collins.
David?
If you have some questions on the IT budget, he might be able to answer them for you, but he didn't create it. The outgoing IT manager did, but he's been doing some deep diving into a number of things. David, would you like to say something? No.
Right. Well, David, welcome aboard. Thank you.
I have a question about the cell phones. It's not about the cell phones. A lot of the agencies or the parts of the city, whatever, seem to use GorgeNet. And now that GorgeNet has been bought by Blue Mountain, is that going to make a difference? I noticed some use Charter and some use GorgeNet. Are we still using GorgeNet?
We are still using GorgeNet. Our system, our phone system is due for a review to see if we do need to make any updates and changes. So that's one of the things that David will be working on, but not in this budget cycle.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions for IT? Hearing none, that concludes this portion. Let's move on to general service.
Thank you, Chair. That'll be myself starting on page 138. And so as the finance director noted a moment ago, in general services, we do break out the staff that we have here among City Hall, police facility, library, state office building. 2 facilities techs in this department, which has previously been supervised by the city manager's department. Mr. Chandler noted a moment ago that will be shifting to the development department, and we'll be adding, or have added, I should say, a facility supervisor position that we hope to fill in the near future. So detailed in this budget are some of the different costs associated with general services. Some of the costs for individual buildings are within their individual funds. Here you can see primarily under park and dock maintenance, a number of different items there. Even with the recent lease of the marine terminal that we have to American Cruise Lines. As part of that lease, we are still responsible for the maintenance and the care of the dock. So much of these budgeted items remain the same. You'll see down under telephone, we have a cell phone allowance for 3 individuals now instead of 2. And those are some of the major items highlighted in this budget. So looking at potentially replacing one of the vehicles we have, a Bobcat. We don't have a high number of hours of usage on that. So this was budgeted in last year's budget, and basically my direction was to try and limp it along as much as we could. But again, wanted to keep some of those resources available as the new facility supervisor comes on board, conducts their own assessments and makes their own recommendations. That brief summary, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Yes, please.
A quick question. The FTE says it's 1.2, but there's how many? I missed the.
So there'll be 3 staffers
Okay.
in total. The 2 facilities techs that we currently have and the new facility supervisor position. So because of that breakout amongst general services and the other departments, the FTE is kind of split amongst those.
That's
The
why.
finance director here leaning forward a little bit though. Did I nail that or- Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Good notice, though. Thank you. All right. Any
Chair.
other questions about general services?
I have one, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
please.
This is to the Honorable City Manager Klebs. I use the honorific because I'm going to come at you hard here. If a trees plan we budgeted for this last year, which would be fiscal year 23, and I see we have budgeted for it under the beautification committee again this coming year, 24. Is it accurate? There's my understanding, or I don't know, supposition maybe that responsibility for leading that would go to the facilities manager.
Correct. And so I'll take this opportunity, Counselor, if I may, to highlight a couple of the different opportunities I think exist for the new supervisor to spearhead whole different projects that are priority to myself and I think priority to the community to some extent. And that would be the downtown street trees that we do have along Second Street. Some of them are doing okay and other ones are decidedly less so. So earlier this year, we did go through and pull a number of those trees that were simply not alive, not making it. Filled the tree wells with gravel to reduce tripping. Is my objective to working with the beautification committee and working with the facility supervisor, have them lead a project to assess those tree wells. When I first came here to this community a number of years ago, we had successful, vibrant trees downtown, so it can be done. And so I'd like to do a focused effort to assess those tree wells and see how a renewed tree planting effort can be successful. Really looking at that long-term effort, not just simply replanting the trees and calling it done, but looking at how we can aim those trees, get them established, have that foliage downtown, that canopy cover to reduce hot weather. My opinion, if ultimately street trees are not successful, can't make that a reality. It doesn't make sense to have tree wells down there. Half those tree wells, if that's not something priority in mind, how we can make those. Likewise, working in coordination with the economic development officer. Some effort. There will be some effort in addressing the downtown Wi-Fi system that we hear quite a bit about.
Thank you.
Along with the murals at the roundabout, coming up with creative ways to not only either restore them and bring them back, but kind of revamp them era that we're in today. So for example, with the Wi-Fi system that we have, and not decided the expert in the area, but I don't think we need a Wi-Fi system that encompasses the entire downtown. I don't think necessarily in this age, standing outside of a particular business downtown, people are logging on to that Wi-Fi. We use our data, but Wi-Fi in certain areas of our downtown, such as Park, Dock, certain areas of the downtown that may have future pocket parks, plazas, may be great areas to have that Wi-Fi coverage. So that's some of the assessment work and due diligence that would be done with any of the projects that I just listed. That roundabout way, no pun intended, answer your question?
It does, yeah. There's got to be a way to grow big, successful street trees downtown if we can grow street trees along streets all over town. So
I think we certainly can.
May I make a comment here?
Sure, of course.
Okay, so next Monday, we have a meeting with can you hear me okay?
Yes.
With 2 people from the Oregon Department of Forestry, Urban Forestry Department. And they will be coming to do a preliminary analysis, a site visit, I guess you'd call it. And then from there, they will make some recommendations on a deeper dive into why our trees have been unsuccessful. So the process is in the works.
Now, important to that as well is after we plant them, we have to maintain them. And in the years past, we've not always done that consistently. So we had a truck going through on a, I don't know, weekly basis to maintain those trees. Is that continuing?
So that is not continuing in this budget year. Some of the street trees that we have that are surviving, I almost said thriving, but are surviving. Near the roundabout, for example, they have some tree gators around them. Facility staff may fill those over the course of the next few months as we conduct this effort. Well as is that decision on some of the recommendations that we may get. I was hard pressed to hire a contractor to take care of dead street trees, so especially those ones which we may be pulling out,
Maybe
So,
we,
that contract won't continue, but in procuring a new contractor who may do the initial scope of work to do the initial replacement, I'm looking to have more long-term arrangement, maintain those trees and get them established over the initial 3 to 5 years, let's say.
right.
Incentivize them or make sure it's structured in a way that they have an incentive to take care of them, not just get the job done.
If we put them in and we don't maintain them, does no good. So,
As an example, like the city of Hood River contracts with a company that puts the trees in for a certain price and then maintains them and guarantees them for so long, whatever the contract is. So they replace the trees if they die. So that's, I think, the incentive that Matthew's talking about.
Correct.
With the contractor.
maybe we can get local businessmen and women to just go out and, if they have a tree in front of their established business, they could go out and at least help us if we reach out.
That could be one opportunity to explore as the Dalles Main Street program kind of reintroduces itself to the community and new director and get some additional legs underneath them. They could be a resource as well.
Great, thank you. All right, that completes. Anyone else on any questions on general service? Let's move on to library then. Now, I'm expecting a joke at the beginning of your dissertation.
Chair, if I may ask
Yes.
for a pause for one moment.
Yes, we'll pause. Did we miss
We
something?
skipped, yes, other finances. And I have,
Should actually be on other uses,
Okay, other uses.
would start on page 142,
Who will be delivering that presentation?
our city manager.
Okay, other uses. You're on.
Thank you very much. So looking on page 142, I'll highlight a number of the different line items here as there are some pretty substantial items. Starting at the top and just working our way down, we have the transfer of TRT funds to North County Parks and Rec. We have a line item for Main Street Tourism where the cruise ship contractor used to live. That line item has, that contract has been canceled. And we don't have that with Main Street anymore, but that line item will remain empty for the next 3 years, following budget guidance, budget law, for eliminating that line item. And then looking at the transfer as part of our contract for services with the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce. Lisa Farquharson gave a presentation to council recently detailing scope of work associated with the contract that the city has with the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce and the requested amount. I worked with Lisa on this budget, made some revisions, reached agreement and recommended amount, put it in your budget. And this is moving on down. This is also where some of the enterprise zone related commitments that we have detailed earlier in the budget, as I mentioned last night. Get a couple different payments and commitments with Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue. Blue. And then moving it down to operating transfers, we have several different ones here. Starting with the street fund, we have 550,000 for street maintenance, as well as 200,000 for the ADA transition plan. If you may recall, that is the ongoing effort related to some of the recent litigation around ADA ramps and the heightened compliance parameters for which they must remain. The unemployment fund, capital projects funds, as noted in my budget message, we have a $2.5 million transfer for capital maintenance items. And this is reflecting creation of the facility supervisor position and looking not only at city facilities again, such as City Hall and the police department, elevators, the roofs, the carpets, the HVACs, all those items that we have that can add up quite quickly, but looking at other maintenance items at Clark Park, downtown street trees again, roundabout, other public infrastructure that is not in the same category as public work infrastructure or maybe somewhat of a gray area, provide those resources for their continued maintenance and upkeep and catch up to a certain degree on some deferred maintenance. The project fund for city security lock project, as I noted previously, that's part of the safe fund dividend that we have and the security upgrade at city facilities. And we have the transfer to the airport at $65,000. That's in partnership with Clickitat County, which, as I noted, there was an adjustment on Clickitat County's contributions as part of the administrative fund transfer. And then $350,000 as part of the match that we have already entered into commitment for the EDA grant with Clickitat County. We'll be matching the same. Correct, thank you. And so as a result of that increase in transfer from Clickitat County, or that administrative fund transfer, ultimately the $65,000 item in this budget will. Contingency you'll see there noted, just a little over $1 million. We look at that, taking out some of the contributions for Main Street, Air Planner, Economic Recovery. Look at that as 10% of. Unappropriated and income balance, similar to some of the policy, fiscal policy guidance I mentioned in my budget message. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. I'll turn it over to the finance director for last comments.
Last night, I had mentioned about a couple of items that we're going to be changing. That was the lease revenue, the addition. We were going to be reducing our transfers out for our airport. And we would also be reducing the 15,000 off of our financial services with Parks and Rec. That is going to, with those changes, that's going to be increasing our unappropriated ending fund balance from 1099232. That will bring it to 1180809. So $1,180,809 is what it will be the new unappropriated ending fund balance.
Sorry, Angie, say that number again. The last number.
$1,180,809.
Yeah. Thank you.
Then we also do have at the very bottom, the reserve for future expenditures. That is $1,346,004.
Other questions? Yeah. Yes, please.
Just really quick, the Parks and Rec transfer, what, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Last night, we mentioned Parks and Rec. There was a change.
Historically with the, I'm sorry, my apologies. So different topic from the TRT dollars.
Okay.
Change with North Wasco County Parks and Rec is that years past recently, we have provided financial services. Parks and Rec District. They will be transferring those services likely to McKinney. And so that is reflected in the different areas.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Mays. Please.
Could you, what's the legal authority to provide 25% of our TRT revenue to the Park District? Is that an intergovernmental agreement, or is that an ordinance or a resolution that was passed by the city council?
So we do have an ordinance that details that commitment. That ordinance, you're all. Here of the ordinance.
I believe it was in 2000.
We have that ordinance in 2003 that sets out that expectation. Ordinance that has a lot of different information in it, such as retiring some of the debt associated with the Union Street underpass, other ambiguities that staff has set as an.
2003 was when the law was changed. I wonder if that was connected to the ordinance that was passed. The law changed that required cities to give 70% of any increase to tourism and.
Right, any more increased here.
All right, any other questions, Mayor? Yes, Debbie.
So just a clarification on the tourism budget. So from 2021-22 to 22-23, there was a big increase from in the Chamber of Commerce budget. And my recollection, I could be wrong on this, was that there was going to be additional funding request was for some kind of a study about tourism, how to get more tourism here. And so I guess I thought maybe that was like a one-time study. So I'm wondering why is the same as it was last year. Maybe it's not just one time.
So one aspect to that increase is coming out of the COVID pandemic. It certainly played a role in that certain amount of catch up and CPI increase from year to year. I believe you might be speaking of Datify subscription service that Chamber has as part of that contract and shares some of that information.
That sounds familiar.
So the Datify software subscription is an annual expense,
Okay.
approximately $20,000, I believe, and was part of the presentation that Park Parson gave at the city council meeting. Haven't seen her because I haven't turned around yet. I'm guessing she's in the audience. She could speak to the Datify system a little bit more if desired and briefly. But the Datify software service allows us to collect data different ways. So certain geofences can be set up to target certain areas of the city, such as an area where a festival is going on, such as Cherry Festival. Identify, the number of unique visitors, where they may be coming from, some of their more general demographic information that will help tourism marketing efforts.
So that I guess my question is still, that was almost a $200,000 increase between those 2 years. And it looks like we're going to maintain that then. And I guess I thought last year that was not necessarily a continuing ask, but is that going to be I guess that we're going to stay with that, whatever that additional $200,000 was part of the budget going forward.
And so just to clarify, the Datify subscription service is $20,000, but it is an ongoing expense.
Right.
So looking at that overall increase, I think moving forward, that is the expectation that we currently have under the contractor service and the services and the deliverables that we have with that.
Other questions, other comments? Yes.
Thank you. I have a few. I guess this would be a request. I'd like to see at some point in the not too distant future, outside of budget meeting, maybe either a report or some resource that gives us context for what we're getting from the Parks District for $350,000 a year, 300 and some $1,000 a year. A lot of money on top of some other monies they get, like SDCs, the American Recovery Act funds, of course, their property tax levy. I'd like to have a little more knowledge on that particular point. A couple other questions. Can you speak briefly to the cruise ship contract, which we don't have? We had one last year. Main Street sort of imploded, and are we thinking there's no need for a cruise ship liaison?
Yes, I can certainly speak to that. Earlier this year, Main Street certainly did have some transition in staff, and essentially what I think they call the pause as this program review process went. When that occurred, they requested that, submitted a request or correspondence to the city, and that contract would have to. That coincided with some of the additional changes in dialogue that city staff.
Yeah.
So we terminated that contract for services, tourism services related to cruise ships and the dock that we have. And it's not something that I intend to be moving forward with the hiring of the executive assistant and under the new dynamics we have with East, see if we can partner and provide those services internally, or make a determination if those services are. We have had some dialogue with the cruise ships about what they may find most beneficial.
Yeah.
Don't know if that tourism services provided under that tourism contract really move the needle for them.
Yeah.
To a great degree. Certainly provided benefit to passengers and staff, certainly of assistance. I don't know if it's necessary going forward. Staff will evaluate that over the course of the coming year, both in perspective of the services itself and as this new lease.
Thank you. And thank you for the more accurate and diplomatic description of the dynamics there.
It's near and dear to my heart.
I would like to speak a little bit to that. I think it makes a huge difference when we have a presence at the dock, whether it's our little group of volunteers or if it's the city or it used to be the chamber. And Main Street is still coming down there. David's coming down with the bags and the maps, and there are coupons in there for people downtown. I think it makes a huge difference in people coming back to this town. You cannot imagine how many people have told us they've been here several times just because they came through and they thought they wanted to see more, so they come back. I think it makes a big difference to have a presence at the dock.
I would certainly agree that a presence down at the dock as a welcome for those passengers coming off the cruise ships.
So it's got to come from somewhere.
Tremendous benefit.
A map makes a difference.
And especially in some of the feedback we got from some of the cruise ships, that welcoming presence is valuable. Coming off the cruise ships. First presented with I-84 interstate kind of as there. So the volunteerism from Bluesies and other volunteers and welcoming those cruise ships is very much appreciated. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but Lisa Farquharson, again, some of the recognition that Mary Davis received for a lot of those efforts is.
Right. I just think there's money there. There's money for tourism. It should be, somebody's got to be taking charge of making sure that cruise ships are welcome. We're the only place that even does that on their whole cruise line. Kind of amazing. A few dollars.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions? At this point, I'd like to ask, do we need a short pause or a break?
Sure.
Yes? All right. We'll go ahead and take a short pause, 10 minutes, and be back. Thank you.
I'll go downstairs.
Thought it would be, since I missed it last night, I'd ask.
Good idea.
Stretch.
Good stretch.
Can you ask him?
Oh.
I saw the tears.
Get your bag.
No.
I didn't get one
Lisa Eddy into the principal's office.
either.
Onward and forward. Next.
Fine.
Oh, they can read. Anyway.
Gotta get our goodie bag.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm still
Thank you.
shuffling them out.
Ooh. Ooh.
We're gonna be here all night.
Ooh.
Here tonight and breakfast.
My favorite,
It's pretty awesome.
my favorite. Okay,
You got- Anybody want good and plenty's? Oh, thank you.
okay, now, I know. All right.
Okay.
Now we are prepared to hear from our librarian, our head librarian. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good evening, everybody. Did you want to joke,
I
Tim? or
do.
not?
It's tradition.
Why did the chicken cross the playground?
No idea.
To get to the other slide.
All right, continue.
Okay, so I'm gonna circle back to last year's budget. One of the items in last year's budget was creating a new website and logo. And that's just been completed. Our new website went live a week ago. It's really awesome. There are like 70 libraries in our consortium, and I think our website's the best one right now. And the logo is really cool. So you'll have to go to the website and check out the logo. One other thing in last year's budget, we got these really cool story dispensers. You push a button and it's like a cash register, but it spits out a story, a short story. And we're publishing students' stories, local content here in the community. So there's really been a lot of interest in that. We just got those geared up about 2 months ago. So we've been, a lot of students are very interested, and we've gotten some really great stories and a few inappropriate stories that we won't publish, but it's been pretty awesome. So regarding this year's budget, so library district tax revenues going up 3%. So the Dalles Library will get an extra we'll get 3% more than last year. And specifically, I want to look at 3 items that are kind of outliers that might catch your eye if you were looking at the budget pretty close. One of them is $250,000 in the revenue side. I wrote a grant to help replace the HVAC system at the library. The HVAC system dates back to 1966. It's preventative in nature. If it does break down the way the economy is right now, we probably would not be able to get a contractor in the library for like 6 months to a year to fix it or to replace it. So it behooves us to place it now when we can to prevent something like that happening. So there's $250,000 on the revenue side for that grant. It's a state grant. And then you'll also see it on the expenditure side under line item 7220, capital outlay for buildings. That's one item I wanted to point out. So last year, when I came to city council, I talked about the new outreach van that the library district, the library board of directors
decided to get for the library district. That money goes to the Dalles because the Dalles is basically going to fund it with tax dollars. So the library district gave Dalles Library more money so they could fund the outreach van and also hire an additional staff person who would do outreach. So right now that person has been hired. And they are doing outreach. So they spend one day in Maupin, one day in Duffer, and the other 3 days here in the Dalles. And she's been fantastic. She's doing tons of story times. She's reaching out to the assisted care facilities. She was in the Cherry Festival parade. She's there's a bunch of children's events coming up that she's planning on going to. So she's been doing a great job.
So who is she?
Her name is Kristen. We hired her like October 1st. What I was going to say. So the van. The money is going to roll over into next year's budget. Anticipated delivery for the van is December 2023. Similar to what Police Chief mentioned last night. It takes a really long time to get these vehicles and then they have to retrofit them. So talked to the representative 6 weeks ago and he said December is when he anticipates us taking delivery on this outreach van. So we're all kind of, it's exciting. So I have to wait a while. And then one other item I wanted to point out is in line item 6980, there's $198,000 budgeted for interactive educational equipment. So once again, the library board decided to give the Dalles Library some extra money. And what we're going to do is buy these educational interactive displays. And we're going to position them. There's going to be 3 of them. And one of them will be in each library. The main libraries, Duffer, the Dalles, and Maupin. Every 4 months, we're going to switch them around, keep them fresh, because the kiddos like new stuff to play with and interact with. So those will rotate every 4 months in the library district. And then there's actually one big piece. It's like an ABC tower that would actually stay at the Dalles Library. So there's 4 big pieces. 3 of them would rotate between Duffer, Maupin, and the Dalles Library. Those are kind of the 3 things I wanted to mention because they're kind of stand out a bit from the rest of the budget. Any questions?
Any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
So Jeff, sorry, I'm still not able to find where it is on the budget worksheet.
Which one what are you looking for?
Question, which is outlined in the budget issue paper, page 264 of our packet. It's for an alphabet tower for
So page
$93,000.
153, line item 6980,
I don't have the line items. Thank you.
near the top of the page.
Kiosks. Thank you. What is an alphabet tower?
Well, it's about 9-10 feet tall. Kids are going to turn it and then letters of the alphabet are going to rotate around and around. It's basically to teach reading readiness skills, teach them the alphabet. The letters are going to be associated with different words. It's highly interactive and it's, it also looks sort of a art piece as well. It really looks nice, pleasing to the eye. Plus it's, it's very educational.
It'll be in the children's wing.
In the children's wing. Yeah.
Sorry, you
raised
said
you-
the district gave some money to,
198,000
so
from the library district.
we're
to the
essentially doing a pass through for the city's budget in that sense. They gave you the money and we're
Yeah,
just,
it's- right.
so it doesn't behoove me to sort of wonder at the cost of the Alphabet Tower because someone else is
it's
already
all
paying for it.
overpriced. I mean, but it's all custom made.
I'll come in and play with it.
Your value add.
Yes,
Yeah.
things in that children's wing are really fun. It's cheaper than the van.
It is.
Thank you.
It is. Yeah, it's all custom made. So last spring, we went to the public library conference in Portland. It happens in Portland every 15 years. So basically my whole staff went, and it ended up being a very expensive conference because of all the ideas we got and all the money we've been spending based on those ideas. But the company that produces the Alphabet Tower and the other three pieces was there, and they were showing their custom made set pieces, and they were pretty awesome. You've ever been to the Fort Vancouver Public Library in Vancouver, Washington? Same company, Bergione of Arizona, made a lot of their educational equipment, play equipment, their children's library.
I also want to say thank you for getting the HVAC grant and you're planning. I said thank you for the winning that.
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
I applied. They liked the grant. I reached out a couple weeks ago, and I haven't heard back yet. But
If that comes through, then you will be replacing the HVAC this year.
right, yeah.
Good.
Well, a question, I just noticed that next to the grant, it mentions the emergency, it's an emergency shelter grant.
It
So
is.
the
It
library
is. So
also acts as an emergency shelter for the,
does for air quality, usually fire, smoke, and the hot and the cold.
Yeah.
Exactly.
very good.
Other questions? Well, then, thank you very
really-
much. Before you go,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
so really,
please.
really just quick clarification question. I'm not sure if it's for Jeff or for our finance director, but on the BIP, it references equipment line item 7430, but I don't see it in the budget.
You get the gold star. We recognize that. So it doesn't affect the bottom line, but
Yeah,
we're gonna switch that, actually, that will go into a different line item. I believe it's 7440, which is in the BIP. I was wondering if somebody was gonna catch that.
Well, we do have someone that's very detailed.
He's on
Thank
the
you.
ball.
All right. Any other comments, questions? I have a quick comment that as I enter the library, I noticed that it's very vibrant. I see the modern technology, which brings technologies to our youth and our community, and it's well populated. People are using the library, so going to those conferences is paying off because it's noticed in my observation. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, that concludes our library then. And now I'd like to bring our Public Works Director up and remind you that we are on a clock and that I have the time running right now.
Thank you. And with respect to the short leash, I am going to really just hit some high points and try to leave as much time for questions that the community may have. Very general overview of the department. The Public Works Department is made up of 6 different divisions. We utilize dedicated funding that can't be mixed or commingled, such as the water funds can't be commingled with wastewater funds and have to be kept separate from the transportation funds. I will draw your attention just to page 155 identifies 15 different tasks or projects that are included in the work plans of the budgets that we'll be discussing. I think I failed to mention yet that the Public Works Department operates utilizing 8 different funds, which we're going to go through pretty quickly. The only thing about the list of tasks that I want to mention specifically is that it does include the completion of the Dog River Pipeline Replacement Project in the coming budget year. Several pages of just information about the different divisions and what their efforts and scope of work is. The Public Works Department does also administer the contract for the operation of the city's wastewater treatment plant. So that's not really a division, but it's just another role and area of responsibility. If I direct your attention to page 170, we'll start with the street fund. The first item that I was going to discuss in some detail is in the revenues. There's a revenue that's significantly increased, which is the amount of money being transferred into the street fund from the general fund. The city manager already talked about this. The majority of that is to double our annual effort of installing ADA sidewalk ramps. We've been contributing $150,000 worth of $150,000 a year worth of work. We're going to double that to try to get $300,000 worth of ramps installed, which should be enough for about 40 ramps. And there's another $50,000 in there for us to utilize the services of a contracted engineer to design those projects for us, because they are just taking up so much of our engineering staff's time that we aren't able to do work on the other projects. So the additional workload and trying to double the amount of ramps we're going to do will be incurring some cost. We're using contracted engineer to develop the specification. The other next item that I wanted to specifically address is near the bottom of page 170. There's a $70,000 item for special studies and reports. That includes 2 studies being done in the coming year. One is a study that's identified in our city's transportation system plan, and we've called it the 6th Street pedestrian study. This effort will look at options for putting in a mid-block crosswalk in the Cascade Square area, instead of having the only crosswalks in place being all the way from Weber and then down to Cherry Heights. It's a big area. We got people running back and forth there. So we're going to be doing a study to find out what the best solution to that, to provide some median some pedestrian crossing midway there. The other one is a study for our 6th Street Bridge. 6th Street Bridge is a historical bridge. We're kind of limited on what we can do to it. Every time that ODOT comes and looks at it, there'll be new rules in place. And if you really pay attention to the load rating signs, the number keeps going down. We're really losing capacity on that bridge for trucks to be able to use it at all. Currently, we're to the point where even the larger fire trucks can't use it. So, trucks are having to use alternate routes of either 2nd Street or 10th Street. But we want to look at do an analysis and find out if we do have some viable options to strengthen that bridge and restore some of its load carrying capacity. I think moving to page 173, this is the capital outlay in the street fund. We do have some purchase of equipment. There's one up there under machinery for $17,000. Purchase a Weston 3 cubic electric sander. This would be replacing one of the portable sanding units that's 25 years old that we put in the back of the pickups for our winter operations. We'll be buying an electric unit now that will give us enough control, slow it down enough that we can actually use salt on the roads. For many years, salt was a no-no in Oregon. Salt's been making a comeback in Oregon. ODOT is using it. Other jurisdictions are using it. We recently added the use of magnesium chloride as a de-icer to our toolbox by buying this sander and having enough speed control it'll allow us to add the use of salt to our toolbox for winter street response in addition to snow plowing and sanding. That's in there. And then the last item I was going to mention is under other uses, a $600,000 transfer that's proposed to the Transportation System Fund. We have a project that I'll talk about in a second in one of the reserve funds to add a center turn lane on First Street from Snipes where it currently ends out to Hostetler. We have a grant to do that, and this is allocating enough money so that instead of just repaving the travel lanes when we do that project, we'll be able to repave the full width and have a much nicer product out. Any questions on the street fund?
Yeah. Really happy to see all the ADA sidewalk ramps, especially out by the senior center. That's been something that a lot of patrons there have been looking for. Sorry, this is my long COVID. Last October, I still have a hoarse voice. Yeah, anyway, the 6th Street pedestrian study, I could save you a whole lot of money. Put it right in the middle of that long stretch and do one of those pedestrian lights that you just push the button when you're coming, and
Similar to what we
wouldn't
did.
that be simple?
Well, it might be pretty simple, but we utilize the services of a traffic engineer to make sure that it's as simple as we think it might be. And I think what you're describing is something that looks a lot very similar without necessarily the middle island, or it might end it.
Well, not the middle island. I mean, just
to,
the middle of that long
you know,
stretch.
section.
I know I'm one who goes across that street a lot because I don't drive from one side of the street to the other. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And it's a long walk to the corner and then all the way back, which is okay too, but it's, yeah, I like to cheat. Salt, do we really have to use salt on our roads?
Don't have to. We haven't for many years.
Why would we start using salt? Is it really necessary? Thinking back to when we were young and we moved out here from Minnesota, we were able to sell our car back in Minnesota the next year for a premium price because there was no rust.
And that's a key point. I will say that just in the time that I've worked for the city, I will share an observation with you. The views of the traveling public, I think, have changed a lot in the last 20 or 30 years. I'm going to sound like the guy that, had to walk uphill both ways to go to school
And barefoot.
yeah, and barefoot. But it was just kind of understood that, people chained up or people put on snow tires and, took measures to get around in the snow. And I think that the transition in public opinion has been, there's a greater expectation that the road jurisdictions are going to keep things in a condition that they can drive without, taking any extra measures. We have, we are a little bit of we still are having growth. Our traffic counts are coming up. We do have a significant number of traffic accidents in the year or in the winter time when we do have bad weather. We've been doing the best that we can, the tools that are available to us. And I don't think it's going to be a real big deal whether we use it or not, because our other road management partners are going to. So it's not going to be a situation in general that if the city's not using a car's not going to be exposed. You probably see it on the freeway and you're going to see it on some of the other state highways.
And then we'll see pyramids like we do back in the Midwest of window washing fluid. You can't drive down those roads without cleaning your windows constantly because it hits the windshield. It's scary.
Any other questions? All right, next.
Next, page 175 is our reserve fund. This is a fund that we contribute monies to from our water, our sewer, and our street fund to purchase equipment, vehicles and replacement equipment. We do have 3 service pickups in here, 1 for each division, street, water, and wastewater. The vehicles that they're replacing of them are 23 years old and one of them's 32 years old. So we do have those identified in the budget. We do have the purchase of a 5-yard, which is kind of our smaller dump truck, a used 5-yard dump truck for $90,000. And then the rest of these, we are building funds for a future purchase. For instance, the top number there, the $50,000, that is building the fund to ultimately purchase a new crack seal machine. It'll cost about $100,000. We're building the funds. We're up to $250,000 with this budget to buy a new 10-yard dump truck in the future. And we're starting to build the funds for a new biosolids truck at the wastewater treatment plant. The council may recall about 5 years ago, we made an emergency purchase of a used tanker truck that pretty much all we could find on the market at the time to get us through. We're thinking 2 or 3 years. We're into year 5 and 6 with that truck. It's starting to cost us quite a bit. It was a pretty light truck for what we were trying to do. So we're building the funds for the ultimate replacement of a new biosolids truck at the wastewater treatment. Biosolids truck, for those who may know, we form one of the byproducts of wastewater treatment is sludge, and that sludge has value as a fertilizer. The way we dispose of it is to apply it to fields for farmers that have signed up for our program. These trucks are used to haul it from the plant up to 5 miles away. That's what that is.
Where I get my hay, he has used that in the past.
Okay. Yeah. There's no questions on that one. The page 176 is the Transportation System Reserve Fund. This is a reserve fund where we accrue monies for some of our bigger street maintenance and reconstruction projects. We do have some grant money that I wanted to point out up under the revenues. First one is the $922,200. This is a grant from ODOT that we have received, Oregon Department of Transportation. This will be used to put in that center turn lane on West 6th Street that I already talked about. Expected to be about $1 million project. That's not counting the additional 600,000 I already talked about to pave the additional width. It's about $1 million project. We're getting 922,000 of that $1 million paid for with this ODOT. The Safe Routes to Schools grant, that's the project that was developed in coordination with District 21. It'll construct sidewalks, improve ramps and crossings on West 10th Street, out servicing the Tonka campus. This project was and also the Chenoweth Elementary School campus. This was selected by or identified by the school district as their highest priority project. Applied for the grant. Nearly $2 million received for the $2.4 million project. Other funding for the project, 200,000 of it is being provided by the city, which is shown at the bottom of the revenue section there, $200,000 from the transfer from the enterprise zone. There's also up in the middle of that table, $200,000 coming from District 21. So the city and District 21 are splitting the match requirement for the Safe Routes to School. And the second to the last project is using ARPA funds or American Rescue Plan Act funds to construct a sidewalk and stormwater collection system on 12th Street, ending Thompson eastward. This is a project that's identified in both the city's transportation system plan and the city's wastewater collection or stormwater master plan. Needed to improve drainage out there, needed to improve safe pedestrian access to the eastern part of.
Sorry, Dave, what's I missed the line item there. Which one is that? Is that?
So that's the second one from the bottom under the revenues transfer from special grant fund, 1.5, the ARPA monies, and then we see down capital outlay, it's identified for East 12th. That's it for the transportation.
Okay,
Get too excited. We're not.
I was getting excited.
Moving forward to the water fund.
Please.
The detailed sheets start on page 186. Overall comment I will make, this budget has been prepared with no water or sewer rate increases proposed. This is the 9th year in a row. Probably could have easily had that discussion this year, and you'll see why when we start talking about reserve, transfer to reserves. But as it's presented to you, there's no increases proposed for water or sewer rates.
Thank you very much.
One of the significant increases on page 186 under contractual services, there's a $69,330,000 expenditure for cleaning the lagoons out at the water treatment plant. Also in water treatment, a solids sludge or byproduct is produced, and we need to bring in a dredging company and pump that from basins where it's originally generated down to basins where it can dry and we can dispose of it. You've been doing that once a year, and that costs about $36,000 each time. We're now to the point where we need to start doing that twice a year. So we've had to double the amount that we're budgeting for that lagoon dredging contract. Another item that I wanted that shows a significant increase is on page 187. About mid-page, there's a $65,000 item for filter media replacement or water treatment plant filters. Our granular material, 2 kinds of sand and then ground up coal. We're to the point where we need to replace some of that filter media. This is the purchase of that media to do. Page 188, the top under permits, there's a $14,000 item, and this will be one of those, the permit line code itself might be one of those that as you're looking across, you'll see $7,100 spent in 2021, $6,500 spent in 21-22. $20,000 budgeted for 22-23, and now we're at 20,000 again for the current year. That's because we have been facing the possibility of having to get some additional permits at the water treatment plant related to our sludge reduction project or process. So far, we keep dodging a bullet and putting it off here. We keep budgeting for it. We have the money there. If we do are told by DEQ that we're going to have to pull the trigger on that, getting that permit. But as you can see, we haven't had to spend it yet. Just got it in there in case we need it. And moving down to 2/3 of the way down the page under chemical lab supply, chemical and lab supplies. Very significant increase there. We saw last year, or our current year, a 70% increase in the cost of our water treatment chemicals. A lot of it was supply chain, a lot of it was national securities and wars and things like that involving countries where these chemicals come from. So we had to bump that number up to accommodate and recognize the price increase we already had and anticipate they might not be done increasing. So we allowed another 15% for it to go up in the coming years. That's what that big. Page 189, under materials and services, got a number of items in there that make up that $57,000 total. 10,000 of that is for us to utilize the services of an engineering firm consultant to do what's called the due diligence related to our aquifer storage and recovery project. Very briefly, aquifer storage and recovery is a technology where we would take water in the winter and there is more water available, treat it at our treatment plant, send it to town and inject it down into a well. We use the well as a storage vessel. And then we can pump that well in the summer and recover that water. Aquifer storage and recovery is the technology that's being used by more and more utilities in Oregon. We're just getting ready to gear up and try it. There's a certain amount of monitoring and they use due diligence that we have to do. That's $10,000 of it. The bottom, last item in under contractual services is 120 water. This LCRR, which is lead and copper rule authorization. I did a budget issue paper on this, and this is not included because I didn't do the budget issue paper because it's such a huge budget impact. I mean, we've only got $8,500 here and we got $8,500 in another water distribution budget, water treatment. It's because I think how much effort it's going to take from staff and the resources that it's going to suck, and the fact that we may very well find ourselves out excavating a large portion of service lines from the mains to people's houses and the mains to businesses, just to confirm what kind of pipe is there as a requirement of this. Really getting our head, working on getting our arms around it. We have to submit a plan by the end of midway through next year. Going to be very intensive effort and on our resources. Part of that, to help us out, we're looking at engaging a services of a company called 120 Water to do some of the community outreach of some of this. And this $8,500 is to pay for those services to assist us in implementing it. Page 190. About a third of the way down, our vehicle repair budget, it's the 4,350, a significantly increased from $16,000 to $35,000. We have a boom truck in our water distribution department, long arm crane type truck. It's going to, by rule, require $20,000 rebuild and rehabilitate the arm and the hydraulics on it. So that's what the $20,000. New one, probably 150 to 200. We bought this one used quite a few years. It serves us well. We don't use it a lot, but when you do need it, there's nothing else that'll do the job. Near the bottom of the page on page 191, you'll see a similar increase in the chemical and lab supplies for our water distribution division, because they have to utilize some chemicals for the water they pump from the wells, mainly a chlorine residual for disinfection, and then the phosphates that we use for corrosion control. And these chemicals saw a similar price increase to what I already talked about. And the last item in the water fund, which, as I mentioned, includes the budgets for both the water treatment plant and our water distribution division, is on page 192 near the bottom of the page. It's the water department capital reserve fund, and there's a number there of $850,000. This is the amount of money, water revenues that we collect that we're able to transfer into the reserve fund for some of our big future projects. This is how we built the fund for the Dog River Pipeline project, where we accrue funds for painting reservoirs and looking at, future water system improvements. The reason that I highlighted it here, I think it's valuable to compare it to the previous years. 2 years ago, we transferred just under 2.8 million. This year, we were budgeted to transfer 2.3 million. We ended up having to pull back on that a little bit. This is the flip side of not having done any rate increases. As our costs escalate, and if our revenues don't completely keep up with that rate of inflation, we have less opportunity to transfer funds for the future. There's a reason I didn't close or come to the council with a discussion about a water or sewer rate increase. That's because we have some very significant development on the horizon, and I see this train around. The other reason is we're in the middle of updating our water master plan right now. And that effort includes a financial analysis. And I would decided to wait and postpone the conversation with the council about water utility rates. We had all the information from that water master. I did want to draw, your attention to the fact that we're experiencing a very significant decrease in the amount of money that we're banking. Any questions on the water treatment, water distribution budgets?
I do have a quick one. I remember a plan to produce energy using methane gas recovery.
That's at the wastewater plant, and I will touch on that in just a second.
Got it. Thank you.
Ready for the water reserve fund?
Yes.
So I was just talking about transferring funds to the water reserve fund. Now, this is the water reserve fund where we budget for these large projects. And I wanted to just highlight, we do have some grant funds that are budgeted in this category. Under the revenues near the top of the page, the $120,000, that is a grant that we have applied for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to do a study on the Mill Creek Tunnel, what our Corps of Engineers role may be in helping mitigate that problem. So if we get those funds, we'll be doing that study. $120,000 coming in here. There's further down, it's the $120,000 in expenditure to do this. The next number down in revenues, $470,000. That is a grant that we have applied for with FEMA, but emergency backup generators on our wells. We have backup generators on Shop Complex. We have them on our sewer lift stations so that they can operate in a power outage. We have backup generators at the water treatment plant. In case power goes out, we continue to treat water and send it to town. We do not have backup generators on the wells here in town that we need in the summertime to meet the full demand of the city. So we're applying for this funding to put backup generators on as wells. There is a match required. You see, we're proposing to receive $470,000. And I believe the expenditure is $627. So we would have to come up with about $150,000 to make that $627,000. And then the last one, there's just under $4.9 million in low interest loans yet to be received if we need them for the Dog River pipeline. Council's heard this before, but we've got really good terms on that loan that was awarded 30 years at 1%. It had some discussion, well, should we everything we can to use as little of that as possible? In the current rates of inflation we have, it makes more sense to use that as much as we can rather than defer projects that are increasing at 5, 6, 7% a year when we only have to pay 1% on this. And then middle of the page, we're on page 194, but the middle of the page is the $5 million. Questions on the water reserve fund? Just about that. So the next one is the wastewater fund. Heavy sigh from the mayor. The wastewater fund, we really don't have a lot of big changes in the revenues. The wastewater revenues aren't as volatile as the water revenues seem. Really, the first thing I was going to point out is on page 206. Top quarter of the page under permits, we've got a significant increase there. We have to have a permit for a wastewater treatment plant to be able to discharge its effluent to the Columbia River, and that permits with the DEQ. Those are 5-year permits, and ours comes due this year and has to be renewed. DEQ has a new process where we not only have to pay a $25,000 application fee to renew the permit. Apparently, they also do not have staff to process them, so we have to pay another $30,000 for them to hire a consultant to review and process our permit. You'll see a $55,000 item in here, which is just associated for our application for a new 5-year permit. Last time it took them about 8 years. So, looking forward to that. And then the only other thing that was really significant is on, this is on page 207, mid-page. There's $116,000 to improve internet service. Looking at different options, we have horrible internet service at the wastewater treatment plant, and the operation of that plant and the support that its staff needs, it's just as critical as any other facility we've got. I think we're going to be able to do this work for considerably less. They had identified 3 different options of getting good hardwired internet to service to them. We budgeted the most expensive of those to give us the latitude to do. We've since learned that we have an abandoned utility pipe that already crosses under the railroad tracks and may make this work a whole lot easier. But we do have the money's budgeted to ensure that we can complete the project. All I was going to discuss on the wastewater fund, I've got 2 more wastewater related reserve funds.
No questions. Okay, continue,
What-
please. Oh, yeah,
what-
question.
One comment or one
Yeah.
question. Google is out there. Can't they give us internet service for you guys?
Well,
As part of our negotiating with them? I mean,
we've got them on the hook for about $23.5 million worth of water system improvements. Because the infrastructure that they needed and the supplies were water related. This was wastewater related, so we didn't have that discussion. In fact, we hadn't even talked about this particular need when we were having those.
to think about.
The sewer special reserve fund, this is the reserve fund where we undertake the larger projects in our wastewater collection, that's our sewer piping, and our stormwater collection system. Got some projects here. Basically, they're all projects that have carried over from the current year. Nothing real dramatic there. And the last fund is a second, a different reserve fund for the sewer operations. That's on page 211. The sewer plant construction fund. This is where we build monies for the next phase of improvement. We're able to, we also pay debt related to previous funding or financing from prior plan improvement projects. With the contribution we're making this year, we're able to increase that fund from currently about $3.2 million to about 3.6. So we're $200,000 that we're able to accrue that fund for the next round of wastewater treatment. Chairman McLaughlin, you had asked about the methane. So within the wastewater fund, I should have touched on it. There's actually a specific line item associated with it. But we did install a microturbine, methane powered microturbine is what they call it, to generate power with the last round of improvements. It experienced some breakdowns and some repairs last year. It's currently offline as they're still waiting for some really long lead time repair items. But once it is a priority to get that back up and running again, so that the methane gas that we generate at the wastewater treatment plant is a waste product, can be used to generate power instead of just burning it off to the areas in the flare, which is the alternative. That facility is there. We will be bringing to the council. May recall we had some discussion, talked about the contract renewal with OMI for the operation of the plant. There were 2 value-added services they were offering, provide to the city in exchange for a 15-year contract rather than the shorter term. One of them is to revisit that renewable energy system and find out, if it needs something else or just how to optimize. That is all I've got.
That was a high priority when we were looking at planning because we were just, the methane was just being burned off. We can recover it, turn it into power. The process that helps to purify the water as it passes over is powered by electricity and lights. And so you know, it goes back into lowering costs and it's also environmentally sound. So that's highly supported. I just wanted to find out where we were. So thank you for that. And we are at 31 minutes and 22 seconds. So you're okay. However, are there any other questions about the water? Yes, Mayor Mays.
The Water master plan will be coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to bring back information to the council. And I think there's going to be an opportunity not only to talk about just level the rates are. They will not be part of the water master. So I think that it will be informative. Haven't yet seen much of a financial challenge on the sewer.
Significant growth funds, and I was wondering what the likelihood would be that we could use some of the reserve funds to offset an increase in the water also.
Well, that's certainly can be done. That's what we did in the early 90s, and it led to a backlog of maintenance that we are still somewhat digging ourselves out of. The water master plan is, we already know of some more big projects. We've been focused so long on Dog River pipeline and trying to get that funded. That I think sometimes in these public discussions, we start to lose sight on some of the fact that we're having a conversation. Too much money for those projects as well. The big one that probably is really early in the line.
But we've been very fortunate in the past years not to have those massive rate increases that other cities have experienced. And it's because of the development and actually being frugal in a lot of the things that you do to present a budget.
We went through some pretty painful rate increases. And we
Oh, boy.
recognize that because we had gotten behind and gone through the period of actually not only reducing or eliminating reserve fund bid projects, we're actually using reserve funds for operations. That's not sound utility.
Excellent.
Don't mean to put too fine a point on it.
Yep. Mayor Mays.
Sidewalk on 12, why is the sidewalk on 12? And is it both sides or just one side?
It's just one side of the street, on the north side of the street. And primarily, it fits with our stormwater master plan where we also have to, if you put in a curb in the sidewalk, then you have to, be capturing the water, you have to have the runoff water, stormwater. You have to have a stormwater collection system and identified the need to do both on 12th. 10th is more difficult. It's more broke up. Like I say, 12th was the one that was identified in the master.
Other question, comments, or inquiries? I just have a short. I'm publicly wanting to acknowledge your leadership during the water usage disclosure event that we experienced with Google. It was a challenge at that time, but you were professional, knowledgeable, very detailed, and thank you for leading us through that.
Echo that, Sim.
It was challenging.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Yes,
if I may.
please.
I'm going back about, sorry, Dave, I'm going back about well funds and reaching back into the page 179, the implementation of the ASR.
Yeah.
This is the study of the feasibility of the ASR, or what? What are
So
you
we've
implementing?
We've already done the study of the feasibility.
Okay.
We have the required licenses from the state to implement. Now we needed to set up a monitoring system where we gained access. We got this in place now too. We gained access to a lot of other wells owned by others in the area. So that we'll be able to use them in addition to our own wells, monitor the effects of it. We start putting water down into the aquifer. we need to understand whether it kind of stays there as a bubble.
Yeah.
Or how widely that effect is realized. So doing that monitoring is part of the due diligence.
So this is essentially a pilot study
It
of
is
the effect.
very close. Yeah, it's startup study. It's a pilot study.
Okay. And that's coming in the next fiscal year, this coming fiscal.
Now,
year.
we expect the 2 wells associated with the infrastructure agreement that the chairman was just referring to be drilled this coming fall. One of those 2 wells is the first ASR.
And is there any
We hope
question
to-
about,
we
sorry,
hope to actually begin our first recharge season this coming.
that's exciting. Is there any question to be resolved about the potential capacity? Or do we have a
So
sense
some
of that already?
Some of the monitoring, I mean, we've made projections.
Yeah.
On what we believe the capacity, and we believe there's actually quite a bit of capacity. And just the actual response of the aquifer in reality. I mean, we've modeled everything, we have our predictions, but the proof is in the pudding. And that's the next step for us to implement the program, is get that first well drilled, start putting some water down there, monitor the effects of that, do our subsequent first recovery season, monitor the effects. You might recall that long-term, because of the state rules, the aquifer always benefits from an ASR program because you're only allowed to pull back out 95% of the water that you.
Yeah.
Always, the aquifer is always retaining at least 5%.
Yeah. No, that's potentially huge for our community. I'm excited about that.
It's, it's exciting to me because we've talked about, in our current master plan identifies, and the new one may identify it as well, a future project to increase our storage by increasing the height of Crow Creek Dam. And that's a pretty expensive project when you start adding 30 feet to a dam, and the associated with it. We're basically proposing to use the aquifer as an underground reservoir. Like it already is, right? But we're just using some of that capacity, and we're not having to incur the cost of building the dam.
Or the risk. Yeah, no, it's very exciting. Thank you for the details on that.
Good sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just make good sense, and we'll just in the project and do this due diligence that's required of us. Included in the budget.
Excellent. Other questions? Thank you very much. All right, we have 10 more items to cover, and we are right now at 7:45, which is the witching hour. So we'll just keep moving on as far as we can, and we'll make a determination at 8 o'clock. All right, the next item on the agenda would be capital improvement funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to push us right along actually to the Special Assessments Fund. There's no staff comment for page 220. So if I can direct your attention to page 223. I'd like to highlight just a couple of items here in the Special Assessment Fund. In particular, under capital projects, may even call Mr. Anderson. But there are a couple changes here, as the Budget Committee may know, and as the council knows. We've historically had a residential sidewalk program. This is detailed in full in the very first bit that you have at the back of the book. That project has been successful with a significant interest and demand for those matching funds. So we are making some changes to the percentage of match to continue to push those dollars out the door and see those sidewalk improvement projects occur throughout the community, as well as creation of a commercial sidewalk program and a redevelopment program. In addition to residential sidewalks, there's interest from commercial entities. In years past, if there have been leftover residential dollars, we have allowed commercial entities to apply. And there's been, as I said, consistent interest in that program. So we think a spinoff might be specifically for the redevelopment sidewalk program. As the community development director mentioned, we have a significant development renewal of some of our properties throughout the community and the downtown core. And oftentimes there can be some challenges there with sidewalks that need to be replaced, ramps that need to be replaced, new strict guidelines that we have. And there's benefit to supporting and lowering that barrier to developing those In addition to the hope and expectation that redevelopment of these properties trigger reassessment, increase in property taxes, we will get some of that return long run. I wanted to highlight a couple of those items here for the special assessment. Anderson, do you want to add any additional detail to those sidewalk programs that I may have glossed over?
It also increased for the residential program, the amount that's being contributed. It was a 50-50 program in the couple of prior years. We bumped it up to a 60-40 just to again help mitigate these rising costs of trying to do concrete work. And then we've added a low income element. We could mimic we have low income water and sewer customers that, you know, there's a process to confirm that they actually qualify. That for those that might qualify as low income property owners would be 80% paid by the city and 20% the property owner, again, trying to help improve the condition of our sidewalks throughout the community. Give credit to the mayor for coming up with the idea of developing a program in the first place.
Questions?
No, any questions on the panel? Yes, Mr. Richardson.
Mr. Cleaves, why not make that an urban renewal project, the commercial redevelopment sidewalk program? Why does it fit better under the city budget rather than the URA budget?
My answer to that would be that it's not restricted solely to the urban renewal district. That there are incentive programs through the urban renewal agency itself that may provide some of the match that we require in these programs.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on.
The next section that we have is capital projects, page 27. Talked about a few of these already. Again, under capital outlay. Transfer for city facility improvements that we've spoken about a number of times this evening, as well as the security system upgrade. I'd also like to highlight holiday decorations in the downtown core at $50,000. It may come as a shock to some, but the holiday decorations that currently exist are not owned by the city of the Dalles. It's kind of I believe it started kind of as a volunteer effort by some citizens in our community to procure those stars several years ago, decades ago, I may add. And the stars go up and come down through a very collaborative effort between Wasco Electric and the PUD, Wasco County and Norcor to maintain those stars, to place the aging bulbs, the appearance of them, and put them up and take. And the ownership is kind of in a gray area, to be frank. And I think that it would be prudent for the city to be involved in putting up those holiday decorations, to engage in that partnership and ultimately replace the decorations that we currently have. I don't know the exact age of the stars, but 20 to 30 years comes to mind. There certainly could be some improvements. LED bulbs, we could see different types of decorations. And as I mentioned at the start of my comments here, a lot of the community associate the stars and trees as a responsibility of the city. It is in the public right of way and in partnership with the PUD. I think it contributes to that downtown revitalization effort that we'll all focus on for a number of years. I wanted to provide you that background context. There's a couple hundred decorations and at $250 a piece, they add up pretty quick. And so we'd look to, potentially leverage grants, partner with other organizations if additional funds are needed, and even go potentially through limited public input process on what potential new decorations may look like. We've seen those go awry at times, so we'll be mindful of how we go forward with that. You also see here some of the improvements I mentioned about roundabout, the HVAC replacement at the library, new dock maintenance. That is the capital projects fund, if there are any questions. Oh, and my apologies, I should add, we will have some IT system update funds allocated here, as well as the limited remodel of the second floor here at City Hall. to create some additional office space for city staff. We'll be moving the military museum and the Veterans Museum downstairs into the flex space area, adjacent to the other museum that we have here at City Hall, Fire Bay Museum.
Anything? Questions? Okay, let's move on.
On page 230 is the unemployment reserve fund. And the unemployment reserve fund is, we maintain a balance in this fund, and this is where unemployment expenses come out of. This year, we're budgeting a little bit different than we've done in the past. In the past, we've always done 5% as needed from each fund. Now we're actually taking it from the fund that used the expense. So for example, if the street fund lays somebody off and that the unemployment is coming out of that, then the street fund reimburses. On the community benevolence fund, this is just basically an in and out. This is a fund that was established years ago for the Veterans Memorial. And so these funds are just maintained through the city's budget. And we get an expense report and we do a reimbursement, or we'll pay out and pay for the expenses needed.
Okay.
Directing your attention to page 234, the special grants fund. This is where a multitude of different grants exist, involved with. I won't read each of these to you, but may just highlight a few. Some of the standing CDBG grants that we have, brownfields grants, which deal with environmental cleanup, petroleum and asbestos. Very successful in leveraging some of the grant funds, for a variety of different entities in town. About halfway down the page, you'll see some COVID relief expenses. One for the Dalles Navigation Center, 500,000, as well as potential future projects. Two, and go in a little bit more detail on. And then on the final page there, you will see that transfer ARPA funding for 12th Street sidewalk. And a grant from SHPO associated with our care and maintenance of the Pioneer Cemetery near the Columbia Community. And on the bottom of page 234, there's the First Street Riverfront Connection. That is the streetscaping project, roughly around Union Street and go down to Laughlin. Potential changes and how that project will move forward. The federal funds that we've received. So that has been a project for quite a number of years. Really excited to see progress. Or clean line of sight on it.
Excellent. Anything else? Any questions?
Just
Great.
learning spelling errors.
Spelling errors? Uh-oh,
Not gonna worry about it.
okay. We're moving on then.
Mm, mm.
Special enterprise zone debt management.
Sorry, may I ask a question?
Of course you may.
So close. Page 234 under COVID, Oregon COVID relief, future projects, $943,000. Is this money allocated? This money we still get to spend on something?
Those monies are, if I'm correct, are the remainder of the ARPA dollars that we have after the allocations that we've made. 12th Street project, Navigation Center, cirrhosis, and one other. So those remaining funds do have a timeline to be used, but they are identified, follow some of the grant guidelines we have on how to use those funds. Name project we use them on. An opportunistic funds for dollars came in as. So out the door, I think within a couple of years here. And staff does have a couple different ideas on how those potential dollars may be used and.
Thank you.
Anything else, Director or Manager Cleaves?
On the special grants fund.
All right,
Next, we have the state office.
So on the state office building, most of you are aware, we are in negotiations currently with the state office building for the renewal of the lease. The leases with the unemployment division and also with the DHS office. And so we're currently still in negotiations. We're close to wrapping that up. So this is really kind of an estimate of what we think that we may receive. This last year, we've done numerous projects. We did a supplemental budget in this fiscal year to be able to do some projects that were very much needed at the building. We painted the exterior of the building. We did major repairs on the roof of the building. We replaced the tile in the interior as you walk into the entrance. We repainted the interior of the entrance of the building along with the hallways. We did some major cleanup in the backyard of cutting down trees and cleaning up weeds and other maintenance items that needed to be done. So this next budget year, we are perceiving to bring in the rent, and they have a maintenance expense that they pay. And then that expense basically covers the expense of the items that we do for the year. And so we're planning on painting the remaining portion of the interior of the inner offices. There's a cabinet that we're budgeting to replace. The parking lot maintenance, which would be restriping the parking lot. We are planning on putting new carpet in the interior of the building, new blinds, ceiling tiles, restroom remodel, and other improvements that haven't been identified yet, that maybe when the new maintenance supervisor comes in, he would be able to point those projects out. As we receive some of the revenue actually goes into the capital project fund. So anything that is left over will go over into the capital project fund for future capital projects. Anybody have any questions regarding that? I did. I did. We painted the exterior. It looks very nice. I didn't paint it, but watch them.
Did you pick the color?
I did.
Good job.
Thank you.
well, to me, my obligation, it's at the top of the hour, the witching hour, and we need to, City Clerk, would you reread that provision for either deciding to continue tonight?
Yes.
All
So
right,
you
and-
end at 8 o'clock unless you decide by consensus to continue on, and you only can do that in hour increments.
Our increments, I think we can manage that we have 4 items left. We have special enterprise zone, debt management. We have a committee discussion and approval of the budget. Those are the items that are remaining. And then we'll adjourn after that. I think we can do it within an hour, but probably less than that. However, but we need to circle back around and get consensus to continue on or to come back for another night, tomorrow night. What's your pleasure?
I'm in favor.
The estimate is what, 10 more minutes?
For the presentations that we had.
We don't want to, we want to be very detailed, and we don't want to lessen any of the following items, but we want to cover them. So you have 10 minutes in anticipation.
I'm confident that we can present the next items efficiently, out of time.
And then final approval, which won't take much time. So consensus is, should we just go down and are you in favor of continuing?
And even if we finish in that amount of time, we have to stay here till 9 o'clock.
No, we don't. I will dismiss you. All right. And Council Richardson?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And Mayor Mays, you're Okay, so we have consensus. We will continue on and we're going into special enterprise zone.
So if I can direct your attention to page 242. There's a number of different items here. There are under contractual services. There is a final payment, Columbia Gorge Community College for our support of the Skill Center. There is the Safe Routes to School match for upcoming grant opportunity. Discuss the SRTS grant for 10th Street. In that process, we went through some preliminary ranking efforts for both 10th and 7th. 7th is kind of the next project on the horizon. Apply for another grant. Sure. Have funding allocated. Had some discussion recently about the water master plan effort that will be underway. Some of the changes and impacts and cost and transfers to reserve funds. So out of this enterprise zone fund, allocating roughly $1 million as part of that water master plan. On the pump, I guess you could say, no pun intended there to a certain extent. There's some low-hanging fruit or some critical items that come out of that water master plan. Going. Then again, moving forward, looking at additional projects. Fund philosophy that I have around this enterprise zone fund in particular, that we have a number of maintenance items, larger capital improvements, focus areas of the city infrastructure is at that base, that primary focus. Structure is certainly not cheap. That placement or upgrade projects very quickly, hundreds of thousands become for service that coordinate. Down below, under other uses, you'll see Safe Routes to School, 10th Street, and transfers to the commercial sidewalk program we've already covered. Any other questions on?
Mayor Mays.
What are the total transfers? What was the money? $450,000. $450,000.
Oh, so my apologies. That's 200,000 for the Safe Routes to School 10th Street project and the commercial sidewalk program. So those go. Special assessment.
Okay.
The 200,000 is going to the Transportation System Reserve Fund. And then the 250,000 is going to the Special Assessment
Okay,
Fund.
it's in there. Thanks. That's fine.
Anyone have any questions? So the last piece is our debt service funds. Just kind of gonna go over these in one. This year is the first year that I put in the debt management piece. So you can actually kind of see what our debt is and what what the total amount of the debt is to date. And you can also see the city debt principal from the graph. You'll see that, it dropped down in 2022, 23, and it's increased a little bit for 23, 24. The reason for the increase is due to the Dog River Pipeline loan project. And as we were doing the budget, that's what Dave has drawn down to date for that project. And then we have, the airport taxable low cap bond for 1.395. That is paid by Hangar B revenue. And then once the debt gets paid for that, then the rest of the revenue goes into the airport fund. And the 2008 debt service fund was paid off in this fiscal year that we're currently in. So we no longer have that. So that'll stay on there until it falls off over the 3 years. And then the other bonds are paid, and those are transferred in from like water fund, the wastewater fund, to make payments on that. The utility revenue bond is comes in from the water capital reserve fund and from the sewer plant construction fund. The utility revenue bond was used to pay off the 2003 and the 2007 bonds, and it had extra water projects. Does any, I guess I should probably also bring up that currently right now we are at an AA2 Moody investors rating. That is the third highest long-term credit rating that Moody offers. And so that's a really good rating of where we're at. So, you know, we are sitting in a very good position in the city. We don't have too much debt, and we look pretty good. Does anybody have any questions regarding the debt? And the remaining pages are the budget and information papers. And I think that each department head, as they presented their budget, talked about their BIPs this evening.
All right. Without any other further questions, we have now completed the presentation portion. We are going to move into committee discussion or any comments that you may have. Are there any concerns? Are there any things you would like to make note of? With that said, then we move into the approval of the budget, and we need to move this forward to City Council for adoption. So,
Oh, sorry.
yes,
Go
yes.
ahead.
Go, please, Sandy.
We do have the yes on the board. Do we want to address that at all?
The yes.
Going to let it go away and not
Oh, that's right, from last
talk
night.
about that?
Please.
Not to mention, on here. Yesterday, we do have another item. Dog.
Right.
Police Department. And a library. So we need just control the coach position. Time.
Right. Housekeeping.
And as we get to the near end, if you guys would like me to recap those changes again, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Well, what I would like to know is the update on the yes, because you were going to reach out and find out about where they stand. We were concerned that if they didn't get this approval, that it would place them in jeopardy. Is that?
I haven't received additional information from Yes on that request to
Okay.
date. And the document that I had received, not, express that urgency, doesn't say risk of closure or anything like that.
So your recommendation would be to table it and then consider it for next year?
That could certainly be one consideration. Interest in supporting youth that we have here. A couple of different options that consider. One way is to look at the city council budget itself, see if there are any adjustments or moves you would like in that budget, that fund itself, to allow funding of this request. The other consideration, the second step I may encourage you to do with a couple different items. Payment we have for the riverfront green terminal. Additional revenues that haven't been allocated in this budget after this budget was created. So, for example, with that lease, there's dollars used for this request. Regardless of that decision or recommendation that this evening, my key takeaways from this conversation last night. How that's an action item over the course of the development of a much more robust process, soliciting and drawing a line for.
I'm not in favor of a full 25,000, but perhaps a smaller amount for this year to meet some needs to move forward. And then with the expectation that it's serving 6 counties, that those 6 counties could also contribute maybe to that portion, but at least it would allow us to move forward. So if we set an amount up to a certain level, like $10,000, say, for example, to give you the authority, I'm not in favor of removing or reducing other funds from other entities that we have agreed and agreed to fund fully. But so I don't want to diminish and take away in order to fund this, but if there's other revenues that we can meet a level, then I would be in favor of that. Yes, Mayor Mays.
Could we, if you decided on a smaller donation, could you make it contingent on other counties, other jurisdictions contributing money, sort of like a match?
And we don't know that they haven't asked the other counties.
We're just making assumptions, but I think that they have probably asked the city, but I've had some dealings with them in the past. And
Well, and if I may add as another example, my dialogue and conversation, other nonprofit at Dalles Main Street, funds may be allocated and budgeted for, release of those funds and the conditions under which fall onto my office. So with Main Street, for example, supportive of the Main Street program and this transition that they're going through, or I would feel strongly releasing those funds, want to have an agreed deliverables associated with that $25,000 part that we have. So like with Main Street and other funding allocations, there's that additional step to go through rather than just simply writing a check because.
And did I understand you have $65,000 that's not in this budget that's coming from, you said the marina, but you mean the dock from the
The marine
ACL? From the marina, what?
Marine terminal.
Cruise ship dock.
Okay, because I think of the marine as
it's,
the boat basin.
no, it's the dock.
I understand. That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yep.
Okay, so that you're saying that there is that extra cash that's not being accounted for in this budget. And this 25,000 could come out of that 65,000?
So it is with the additional revenue and then the decreases of revenue investment. So we have $65,000 additional for the boat lease. And then we have a reduction of miscellaneous and sales and service for $13,500. We also have a reduction for financial services for the Parks and Rec of $15,000. Then we also have a reduction in our expenditures on our transfers out to the airport. So this gives us an additional $81,577. From there, we have 2 items that need to be adjusted this evening. And that is $5,000 for overtime for the codes position, $16,000 for the police department because they're not able to complete the vehicle. And so that is 21,000 minus the 81,577. That gives us $60,577. It's not been used. If that doesn't get used this evening, it goes into the ending fund balance.
Could that be a
That's
discretionary? Could that be a discretionary fund? And we give authority to the city manager to make that decision on that without having to come back for review for budget.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you could recommend tonight that we add retirement shelter, city council's contractual services line item, $5,000 or alternative amount, like, and I would work with the finance director, that adjustment to the budget, along with these other.
That seems sensible and reasonable, doesn't it? It allows us to meet their needs, and yet we have some extra funds that we can allocate. So that's a good plan to me.
I agreed. Yeah.
All right. Anyone else?
Are we talking the full amount, 25?
Up to.
Up to 25.
That's what I think too, with more information to be provided before those funds would be released. And some of that information that I would hope that the city council would ask for before or the city manager, whoever has the authority to release those funds would be, are some of the other counties also providing some revenue and what exactly are they going to use it for? A little bit more specific. You know, I'm sure it'll go to good use, but I would be in favor of, shall I make a motion? Is that what's needed at this point or?
Can I?
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I just want to make a comment. So how much instruction do you need from us, or do we rely on you to use your judgment in this? Do you want us to specify the dollar amount, but also the conditions under which it would be released, or do we put that responsibility into your hands?
Budget purposes this evening, we want number,
Mhm.
budget, direction. Guidance that you provided on some conditions and additions. Want, staff may want.
I need a Robert's Rule of Order. Is this requiring a motion or can we do this through consensus?
It would be part of your, what are they doing? Adopting the, but no, they're approving the budget to send to council. It would be part of your motion that you're approving this with, you're approving the budget to be sent to the council for adoption with these changes.
Okay,
So adding what the things that Angie said.
so
Angie,
will
can you
be a
bite off
time-
the word?
there will be a time I'll ask for a review and maybe you could, send that back to us in the form of a motion and then we can reread it. Someone would agree to present that motion, please.
I have one more
Yes.
question or comment. How do we talked about last night when this came up that, is this going to become a recurring thing every year? Do we need to account for it in the future and whatnot? Should we put that in as a condition? We need more information if it's going to continue to be a line item in the city's capital fund.
I think it should be adjustable rather than just a flat line item that they become expectant of that, in my opinion, but I'm only one.
I was gonna say, we've been having a little bit of conversation about this, right? That we want, or at least I want council to look at this council budget and to be thinking about the items on there and the process for how they get on there. And it's a little bit catch can and tradition and a little bit of a black box. So I would say yes, but starting almost from scratch, right? There are some things on there we feel like we are obligated almost to fund right now. And that could go up for review. And maybe having some thought about a policy on recurring expenses, what kind of funding we would obligate ourselves to or consider. For instance, I don't know why we would have the link bus under the council budget. So I feel like there's a sort of a holistic conversation to be had there that includes recurrence versus.
I'd also make a comment, which is, I don't want us to assume anything, which is to say they made this request this year. And instead, and in support of the conversation here, which is, in my opinion anyway, anybody who wants those, the funds should be in a more formal process. I don't think there should be any assumption that because you decided this year that you're going to give $25,000 to us, well, then we have to give it to them every year. I don't think that should be what we're doing. Right now, I think we're making a decision on what's in front of us, which is this one request. We're doing this because it was asked and because we have some extra funds. Going forward, everybody, in my opinion, my advice to the city council is that you set up a system whereby everybody who expects this is contractual services is sort of, in my mind, not being professional in any way. The things we need that we have to contract with someone to do. And the obvious one to me is always the fireworks, because that's something that the city council wants to have done. Somebody else has to do it. There isn't a place, if there is no other place, for instance, tourism dollars, where that could be located in the budget as a contractual service, then the city council says, okay, well, we'll do it under our little thing here. So, so I think there's enough question in my mind as someone who sees these things and thinks, well, why isn't the Link bus over here? And why isn't the fireworks over here? Why is it here? That there needs to be some sort of system where you define what the city council is saying, doing with this discretionary thing, whatever this list of things is that you guys are doing. And so I would like to say to the city council members that are present, the mayor and the city manager, this is important. I think this perception of what's happening with this little corner of the city council, if you're going to take on the responsibility of year after year funding a project, then I think it should find a place that makes sense within the larger budget. If you've got a special situation where somebody comes along and says, I need $25,000 this year, then you can decide, if you want to do it. But don't make the assumption that if you do it, then gosh, we're just going to have to keep doing it. So that's my thought. I will be on that committee if you would like me to. If you'd like my help.
Oh, your comments are noted and reasonable. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So we have come to that portion that we need to take a motion to approve this budget. Would you reconstruct and all right, thank you. I'd just like to hear the motion.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I thought there was supposed to be time for discussion. Is that it? That was our discussion and we're done
Like to add to
discussing?
yeah, we are
No.
discussing.
Okay. I guess not.
What do you got, Sandy? It's your time to discuss.
Nothing else. I can
This is
think
your-
of. I just
To
thought
keep
there
us
would
here
be
for the
more
full
discussion
hour.
Before we automatically.
No, I'm-
That's it. That's
Well,
it.
we're going to stay here for the next
Before we
half an hour.
automatically just, approve the budget
What
or recommend the budget.
we are recommending the
Yes.
budget to be approved.
I've had plenty. to
Chairman
say.
McLaughlin, you want to take a roll call of the members to see if there's any other comments to be had while the motion is?
I can do that. Well, let's start with you, Councilor Richardson.
Lots of comments, but
Oh,
nothing else for the
No,
city.
let me get my watch started, please.
I appreciate the staff in presenting what's a complex document in a pretty readable and attractive format. And it's, I'm not an expert in these matters, but I feel like I'm increasingly able to follow along, and I appreciate that. It looks good. It feels like we're in a good spot, and there's a lot of really meaningful projects, both completed and coming up. So I'm feeling good about it.
Please,
Super fun. See you next year.
Sandy.
I really appreciate the budget worksheets. When I look at these, when I started out reading this and looking at the financial statements, it's like, well, yeah, okay, fine. What does all this mean? And then I turned the page and I had all this nice blue stuff to read. Really well done. Thank you.
Well, I think this is my third year on the budget committee, and I expected there to be a lot more back and forth about, like we've had in the years past. Where can we find, $90,000 for the truck for the dog catcher truck. I don't know what it's called. And I think that, there was quite some kind of last minute large requests the last couple of years, and it was really difficult. So I would just like to thank those who were involved in preparing this budget, to just have everything on the table for us to make it a lot easier this year.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll just echo those comments about the format. It's an outstanding format. It really was easy to follow and track. And I also like the way you've organized the
I do
group
too.
here.
And
Thanks, Angie, for putting it together. It was a lot easier to follow. This is my second year on the budget committee, and it was a lot easier to walk through this year. I think that I just want to echo again, like getting the the challenge out to the city council members that are here and the mayor. For those requests that we do have, because we have had a lot of them in the past. We didn't have as many this year. Last year, I remember that parking lot board being full. I think that, maybe we're a little bit lucky this year or something like that.
I think we're further away from the pandemic that we were. I think we were still in the recovery mode. And I think we're coming back and stronger now than we have been in the past.
Yep.
So I too have noted the improvement. I have reviewed budgets for almost 50 years in the educational field. And most of those were 3-4 inches thick. And this is very concise, very readable. I like the way that the introduction gives you a broad overview of where the expenditures. It's also, it meets our fiduciary responsibility to represent the taxpayers. And I remind you that this is not our money to spend. This is taxpayers' money, and we have a responsibility to spend these funds wisely. And I believe that this process we've accomplished tonight has done that. I'm confident that this process has been thorough and it reflects a clear picture of the finances employed by our city. I think this panel has done an outstanding job, and it's been a pleasure working with each one of you. With that, we are now ready to, Angie, would you please read back? Oh, please. Like by title only so that we can hear it. Then we'll come back and I'll ask someone to make a motion and then we'll apply and then we'll resolve.
Okay. Move to approve fiscal year 23-24 City of the Dalles budget with the following amendments. $25,000 going to yes, $5,000 overtime for codes, $16,000 for police vehicle, dog control, sorry. 65 additional revenue from the dock lease, reduce miscellaneous sales by $13,500, reduce financial services by $15,000, reduce airport transfers by $45,000 and $45,077, increase ending fund balance $35,577. And then in the airport funds, increase intergovernmental revenue, Clickitat County, 19,230, reduce general fund transfers, 45,077, and reduce ending fund balance, 25,847.
Now, point of order, without restating that, can someone make a motion from here using that as, I will entertain a motion by someone. Please.
I make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 fiscal year budget as read by the Izetta.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Debbie Ferrer seconds. We have a motion. Is any other discussion before we make a decision? All in favor of adopting this budget to be forwarded to the city council for adoption, please state aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then the motion is carried and this budget will be moved to the next level. Thank you very much. This,
I'd like to make a motion that after we adjourn that Sandy Haker will be required to stay here until 9 o'clock.
I have one more question.
that request is denied.
This little red tab here. I forgot.
This budget meeting is adjourned.